Okay, we are back with another Between the Pages book chat. And today we have fantasy author Joe Jackson with us to talk about his Eve of Redemption series. So I'm going to turn it over to him now and let him introduce himself. Take it away.
Well, like you said, Joe Jackson. I'm the author of the Eve of Redemption epic fantasy series. It's an completed 11 book epic fantasy series. I also dabble a little bit in horror and some other. I'm trying to write a sci-fi book, so trying to write a little bit of everything. At this point, I only have the epic fantasy series published so far. I do have a short story coming out in an anthology in December that's supposed to open up another novel. I'm not sure if that'll become a serial or a standalone. We'll see what happens with that. But that's basically me in a nutshell.
Okay, so why don't you give us an overview of the series, what it's about, stuff like that.
Well, Eve of Redemption starts off with the main character, Carrie Ann Vanador. She was a hero in her prior life that died young from a terminal disease. She is resurrected about 200 years later, obviously in a completely different time. The world's in a completely different state of flux. And she basically gets thrust into a brewing war between her world and the underworld and its demon kings. It starts off as a pretty innocuous, straightforward mission to go look into rumors of a civil war that just blows up into a war amongst 7 worlds in total. So it's pretty expansive. It starts off small and a little bit slow, but over time it branches out and it grows into something pretty tremendous by the end. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. It focuses a lot on friendship between the characters, their faith, and their sense of family. So amongst a lot of epic fantasy, you see massive wars, and this series is no exception. But it's really the bonds between the characters that let them survive to become heroes rather than the other way around.
Sounds cool. So tell us a little bit about the main character, what she like.
She's a bit of a loner at the start. She knew in her prior life, she knew she was dying. So she kind of kept everybody at arm's length. So she has some pretty major trust issues. She has something that happened to her as a child that also kind of tends to make her keep people at arm's length. So as the first book is as much the other characters trying to break through the ice and get to know her at the same time the reader does. So hopefully that entices people. It's interesting for them to. Hang on one second. What's that? I'm on a live chat. I'll be up in a few minutes. Forgot to tell my wife why I was coming down here. So yeah, she's a fantastic fighter, but she has trust issues. She tends to be a bit of a loner and kind of push people away. So the first book is really about her. It's as much about her overcoming her personal demons before she can take the next steps in the overall plot to actually fight this brewing war.
Yeah. So what kind of world setting do you have? Is it in our world or is it in like an alternate world?
It's an alternate world, but readers will find a lot of stuff familiar because the humans, the world that takes place in, is actually the homeworld of an alien species called the Rear. They're like draconic people, but there are humans because the humans arrived there in spaceships like thousands of years before the books take place. So there are humans among the population. So there are some things that I wouldn't quite call them pop culture references, but that'll make you feel familiar with terminology and stuff because it's things the humans brought with them from Earth.
Okay, so do you said that there's some demonic sort of things going on? So are these aliens or is it sort of pulled from mythology?
As far as the demons, kind of a combination of the two. It's it's pretty heavily based in Christian mythology. So people that are familiar with some of the biblical and just Judaic folklore with characters like Abaddon and Baal and Baphomet, they'll recognize names like that in the series, and they're not directly pulled from biblical and real world mythology. There's a bit of dramatic license taken, but readers will find a lot of it familiar as far as the Demon Kings are concerned. A lot of them are just my creation altogether, but I don't want to spoil any more than that when you find out what they really are.
Yeah, well, I know a lot of those names too because I did a little research on demonology for one of my short stories. So, are there any themes that run through the series?
Yeah, like I said, a lot of it deals with faith, and family ties, friendship, things like that. I guess you would say there's a strong anti-racist theme through it too, just because there's so many different species in my world, and some of them don't trust others, and it's you kind of see that they go through the same things we go through in real life, and the situations they get put in kind of force them to think outside the box, force them to look at things a different way. So it's not written really intentionally to be like an anti-racist theme, but it's there. Kari in particular, you have like half demon characters that in her previous life, she's a demon hunter, so she never would have trusted these people. And now she's in a different time, so she kind of gets stuck working with them. And at first it's a real culture shock to her because she's like, I used to hunt these people. What are we doing working with them now? So it's that's another theme. Faith and family are probably the two biggest ones in the series, though.
Okay, so what is the hardest scene or hardest type of scene for you to have written in the series?
The hardest scene by far was the ending of book 5, because one of the major characters in the series dies, and it's not just their death; it's the effect it has on everybody else. Really kind of tears the heart out of everyone. And that chapter, that was by far the hardest chapter I've written in the entire series, which probably is 230, 240 chapters total. And that one was the hardest one for me to write. It was definitely loaded with emotion because, when you're a writer, you get attached to your characters just as much as the readers get attached to them when they're reading. So, like I said, I was speaking with someone in a fantasy forum the other day, and I said, if I could get away with it, I'd never kill any characters because I love all of them, even the bad guys to an extent. You kind of get attached to them after a while too. So it was just it was hard for a number of different reasons. It's hard to kill a character. It's hard to write that, and then dealing with the emotions of all the other characters, dealing with that death it was tough.
Okay, so on the flip side, what was your favorite scene to write in the series?
Oh, the big reveal, which takes place in book 9, Gods and Kings, where the reason for the series title is revealed, and what all of these crazy plot elements that keep coming in from all angles finally ties into. And you get to the second chapter of book 9, and it's like, this is what it's all been about. This is where we go from here. That was by far my favorite.
Okay, so any of your secondary characters a little quirky or steal the scenes?
Yeah, from time to time. I have a character named Eli that he was just supposed to be a secondary character, but his sense of humor and just his general fearlessness, because he's kind of a jokester, so a lot of people don't really take him seriously, but he's also he's a dedicated fighter, and he will lay down his life for people he loves. So sometimes it's something happens where people end up in a fight, and he's the first one to step forward and take a bullet for someone else, so to speak. So he tends to be a scene stealer. There's a couple of other ones, but they tend to be more major characters. I think. By book 10, the series has 53 protagonists, so there are a lot of characters. Some of them kind of blend into the background a bit, depending on where the story's at. But a lot of them are really major characters, so it's easy for people to kind of steal the spotlight.
Okay, so you may have converted a new reader here, so.
That's always good to hear.
Anyway, so what are your characters afraid of?
Well, amusingly enough, the main character, I think, over time becomes afraid of being alone, which like I said, she starts off as a loner. So to me, it was interesting to watch her change over the course of the series to where she kind of becomes the type of person that doesn't want to be alone for any reason. Whereas in her prior life, she kind of walked the world alone, almost pretty much literally. Traveling around city to city by herself, looking for problems to solve. I guess losing would be the most common thing, that when what they're all up against, just the thought that if they lose, it's going to be more than just them that suffers. So
Okay,
it's hard to boil all of them down in a quick minute.
Yeah. Okay, we have a question from the audience here.
Uh-oh.
What's the most rewarding part of writing fantasy and world building in your experience?
Oh, it's definitely when the readers enjoy it as much as I do. Having created an alien world with, I think, approximately 19 different unique species to the series, when readers tell me how cool they are and how much they love them, and, oh my God, can you go out and get an artist to draw pictures of all these different races? That's my favorite part.
Okay, so which character would you like to hang out with most in real life?
It would have to be Kari, my main character. It's just she kind of embodies everything I think I strive to be. I don't want to say she's perfect, because she's not. She's got plenty of faults, but she always tries to do the right thing. She always tries to be kind as much as she can, even when she's going through something. So she's a great person. Like I said, Eli would be hilarious to go out drinking with, I think, because if you ended up in a bar fight, he'd probably be the one that took all the punches to the face.
Okay, what kind of an antagonist do you have in this series? Is it a series of people, or is it just like a force, or what?
It's a number of different villains. The first one is kind of a pawn of a bigger power. The one that Kari deals with primarily in the first book is really just either a pawn or a patsy, depending on how you want to look at it, to a bigger problem. So then when she finds out what the bigger problem is, he kind of becomes her focus. And then she finds out he's just a pawn to somebody else. And it just through in book 3, she really gets a look at what she's dealing with on the whole, and she kind of gets overwhelmed by it, because it's a massive force that's aligned against her. It's a whole world of demons and demon kings that, going in there with her swords and fighting them hand to hand is just not even an option. So she quickly gets educated that it's going to be quite a process to try to take them down, and that's why it's 11 books and not 3.
Okay, so you mentioned some other genres that you're dabbling in, horror and sci-fi. So tell us a little bit about that, and are there any other genres that you might like to try in the future?
I did write in urban fantasy, which it's interesting because the fantasy world of Eve of Redemption is kind of like your typical epic high fantasy world, where it's kind of like medieval tech and magic like that. But there's a part of the world that is extremely technologically advanced. So you get get a dichotomy. There's a couple of characters that come from that technologically advanced part of the world, and I wrote an urban fantasy which is the origin story for one of the characters that comes from that part of the world. So it's like an urban fantasy that takes place in a big city, and she's like a computer hacker and stuff, and a series of events leads her to end up getting kicked out, so to speak, to the more medieval part of the world where it's swords and magic, and she has to adjust to that. So that was interesting to write because I got to look at both sides of the world with that character. I did a horror short story about a creature that lives in a mirror, which was a lot of fun. I have
one of my favorite themes.
It's mirrors creep me out. So
oh well,
right?
No, I've written several mirror-oriented stories, so yeah.
I remember reading. They did a thing a while back. I can't remember if it was on Twitter or Facebook, where it was write a 2-sentence horror story, and hands down the best one I read was, it said, so and so woke up at 2:30 in the morning when he heard tapping at his bedroom window. And then his blood froze when he realized it was coming from the mirror. And I was like, oh, God. So, my horror stories kind of a little bit like that. I have another one in mind that deals with a succubus. But I generally write those as shorter ones that go into anthologies. And the anthology, that one with the succubus, was supposed to go into, never materialized. So if it does at some point, I have a story idea for it already. I have a sci-fi novel that I'm working on. As I discussed with Joe Compton in his podcast, Go Indie Now, I quickly discovered that sci-fi takes a whole lot more plotting than fantasy, because when you got a character in a spaceship that's flying from world to world to world to world to world, you've got to have solar system names, planet names, society names, empire names. Where's she landing on the planet? I don't know. For some reason, epic fantasy to me felt like a cakewalk compared to trying to write sci-fi. And a lot of that might have just been that my fantasy series was based off of Dungeons and Dragons campaigns. So a lot of the backstory to it was already written. So I need to do a lot. I need to sit down and do a lot more plotting ahead to do the sci-fi. Other than that, I haven't dabbled in too many other genres yet. I'm not sure if I will. I think a lot of them just require a lot more research, whereas you kind of are the research when you do fantasy. It's all up here.
Yeah, there's a lot of that to it, unless you're doing historical fantasy like I'm doing. And
oh yeah, a lot of
yeah.
research,
Then there's a lot of research, but luckily I love history. So anyway, so I think we'll wrap it up here. Oh wait, we have one last question here.
A concordance.
Yeah. Oh, so do you keep a concordance for your universe? I'm assuming she means like a series Bible. So.
Not as such. Most of it, honestly, is just it's up here. Like I said, it's the Eve of Redemption series is based off of several Dungeons and Dragons campaigns that I've run over the last 28 years. So I've run the game so much that most of it's just kind of ingrained in my head. It's like second nature at this point. And when I wrote the series, I plotted the first 4 books very, very heavily. And then right around book 5, I knew where the series was going so well that I just started writing them by the seat of the pants, as they say. I just pantsed the last 6 books of the series, and I think I found one minor continuity error. And if you don't find it, I'm not telling you where it is.
yeah, I think that's the author credo. If you don't find the continuity errors, we ain't telling.
No, the best thing about it is it's explainable too, because it's something that happens very briefly to the character that I forgot about. I freely admit it, but it's very easy for me to just turn around and say the character forgot it too. It was something that happened for a split second, and 3 years later she didn't remember. So that's my defense, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap it up here. And why don't you tell the audience where they can find you and your books?
All of my books, the whole series is in Kindle Unlimited. the whole 11-book series. You can find me on Facebook if you look for The Silver Blades. Is the name of the fan group, because that's the group in the series. Other than that, I took down my website and I still haven't put it back up yet because I was looking for a better host. So I'm kind of lazy on that, but I think as I publish more books, I'll probably make a website that has everything on it, not just the Eve of Redemption series. So sorry for showing up a bit late.
Oh, that's okay. I mean, it's kind of been the last couple of days been kind of like that's the way the luck's been running. Technical issues on some of the panels this morning. So yeah, it's been fun.
Was out throwing my daughter in a big pile of leaves in the backyard, and then my phone pinged, and I was like, "Oh no!"
well, that's a good excuse for being late to playing with your daughter. So okay.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you for being here. It was a pleasure chatting with you. And Between the Pages, we'll be back tomorrow with Aaron Hodges. So join us then.
Oh, Aaron Hodges, that should be fun.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
Bye for now.
Bye.